Listeners, did I say World Ablaze? Let me say it again. World Ablaze listeners, I have another guest. I have Mr. Allan Paul Rodgers. He is an author, The Globalist Plan to Collapse Everything. And through your findings is what I want to discuss. Well, first off, let me back up because we just had a discussion about this. You writing this book is what led me to asking you on here. So I found out about you. I found out you wrote this book, and I wanted to know what you found out in terms of the globalist agenda to literally collapse the West or bring the world to heel. I want to discuss what compelled you to write this book. And also, since you wrote it, I want to get into later down the road what else you have found to further support your findings. Because what I found interesting from what I perused, and I admitted to you earlier, I didn't read your whole book. I did peruse it. I did my best. Sure. But I also heard other interviews in where you yourself were on other shows talking about the book. And what I find interesting is how you actually have these QR codes that will link to supporting data, which is really cool. And unlike just, citing your source, you're like, well, here's my source. And then here you yourself can go there very easily with your phone, scan the QR code, and then you can go right to the data itself that you found, which is ingenious, by the way. So first off, let's talk about what compels you to write this book.
Okay, so I always dreamed that one day I would write a book, but in my head, that would be like when I retired and I just had time to kill and I could just take a nice leisurely pace and get it done in a year or something like that. I had no idea that I was kind of going to get a tap on the shoulder, so to speak, right in the middle of my busy business life where I hardly have enough time to get things done that I have to get done for my work. But what happened one morning in late April 2024, I woke up around 4 a.m., was getting ready to get out of bed to use the bathroom. And I had an experience unlike anything I've ever had in my life. Never before, never since. And what that was I call it an instant knowing. It was the most intense knowledge of anything I've ever had in my life. It was an instant knowledge initially of 6 pillars of society, American society and Western society, that are under attack and in danger of falling. And it was all 6 at once. I was simultaneously like drinking in this knowledge of all 6 at one time. And it blew me away. Like there was, in a normal conversation, you can hear one person, listen to one person. You might hear 5 conversations, but you can't focus on them. In this case, I was able to focus on all 6 simultaneously. It was like a supernatural knowledge transfer is the best way I can describe it. But it blew me away. It lasted somewhere between half a minute and maybe 2 minutes. Hard to say. But so I got out of bed and I keep paper and pen in the bathroom and I wrote down these 6 collapse points. And I just want to say that I didn't know the details of any of the 6. It was just very matter of fact. There's 6 pillars of society. A few of them are like national borders, security and police protection, banking and finance. There were 6 of them instantly at once, and there was no fear. It was just like very matter of fact, this is happening and it's in danger of coming down. So, wow. So I wrote them down, tried to go back to sleep. Within a few minutes, 3 more came the same way, 3 different pillars that were under attack. And I wrote them down, same thing, back to bed, and then 2 more. And by the time this happened, I almost jumped out of bed. It's like, what the heck is going on with me? And I wrote the last 2 down for a total of 11. And it just, again, for some quick perspective, I've said this on other podcasts, but I think I have to say it. I was debating whether I would say this before I started this whole podcasting thing. But it's like, do I tell people that I had this or do I don't mention it at all? And it's like, I got to be transparent about it because if this wouldn't have happened, the book wouldn't have happened. Like I said, I was a busy guy with a small business. So I had no intention of writing anything, but this happened to me and I felt like it was from God. There was no audible voice. There was no vision. Like I said, it was just like an instant knowing, but it was so unique in all my life experience that I felt like it had to be from God. You know, I do pray every day. I'm a prayerful person. I believe in God. I don't consider myself to be like a religious person so much as just a believer. And but I never had anything like this at all. And so after that third session where it was the last two collapse points out of the 11, I'm just like, God, why are you showing me this? What is this all about? Like, and I'm just like puzzled. Like, why would you do this? And finally it just occurred to me, do you want me to write a book? And if you do, then what would the title be? And I couldn't finish that thought. What would the title be before the entire title and subtitle was just instantly there in a flash, just like everything else that happened up to that point. It was a flash. And so I knew the whole title without hearing the words in sequence. I just knew it. The globalists plan to collapse everything to usher in a new world order. It was instant. It was clear. It was strong. And so I said, okay, I'll research the evidence for those 11 pillars under attack, and I'll try to write a book about it. And then about 2 minutes later, I got butterflies in my stomach. Like, how am I going to do this? What did I just sign up for? And so I'm like, I'll do it, but I don't know how to do it. How am I going to do it? And a thought came really quickly: just write it from the heart, and it will flow. And so that's what I did. And I went downstairs after that. There's no getting back to sleep. Went downstairs, made some coffee, sitting at the table and trying to start notes out. Like, how am I going to arrange my time that I can possibly do this? And an hour or two later, my wife comes down. I said, "You're not going to believe what just happened to me." Explained the whole thing. And she said, "I totally believe it. When do you want to get started? You need to get away somewhere. You want to go to the beach? You want to go to the mountains? Just get away and just start, And so, we booked 8 nights at the beach. I spent morning till night for 8 nights in a row other than going out for breakfast and going out for dinner. It was morning till night, till 11 at night or whatever, mostly researching, taking notes. And I did that, I kept it up every weekend throughout the whole summer. And I mean, Saturday morning till Sunday night, 11 p.m., I was working and researching. It was like a blitz. And every evening, night where I could spare some time. And I was stealing time away from my workday too, getting behind on my work just because I was just highly motivated because I felt like it was meant to be. And I felt like I was asked to do it, and I didn't want to let them down, and I didn't want to do a crappy job. I wanted to dive in with both feet. So that's what I did, and I finished it in early September. So it was actually about a 3.5 month total blitz, and 300 pages roughly, 175 QR codes that link to mostly short videos and also articles. So what I wanted to do, I still remember this. I was leaving because what I would do is I would spend time at Barnes and Noble. I'd like knock out 5 or 6 hours there till my battery burned out. Come home, work at home. I was trying to break it up because it was pretty grueling. But I remember I was walking down the sidewalk one morning on my way to Barnes and Noble on a weekend, and I thought, how am I going to get this video information across? Because in all the research, it's the videos that are the most compelling. Like when you hear these globalists saying some of the stuff they say in their own words, when you see news reports of things happening in Europe that are in parallel to what was happening with our borders being crashed and all the kind of things that are going on here, were going on over there, but longer. And so you see these and it's like, how am I going to get this across? And it just popped in my head, use QR codes. Now, I've never read a book that had QR codes, but I went in all in on it, So yeah, all these QR codes, and there's visuals in it too. So I wanted to make this. I wanted to make this an easy read, even though it's a heavy subject. So, just for example, there's a chapter, "The Rise of the Alternative News Media," with the Superman alternative news media guy. That's the end of another chapter where we're talking about 1984, George Orwell, and saying no more in this country, let's end it. So you have visuals like that that go along with it and the QR codes so that you kind of get a break. You're not like pounding through all this text. You're jumping out to a video, thinking about it, back into it. And so, again, even though it's a heavy topic, it's kind of it's an interesting experience. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
All right. So I don't think there's anything wrong with you saying how you became compelled to write this, because if you look throughout history, there's a lot of accounts of people who felt the will or the need to do something great because they felt like that someone was talking to them, or they had a sense from somewhere that was like, hey, I'm putting this in your head. You need to get out there and act on it. And it could be God, it can be whatever, however they want to define it. It always seems like there's something from the outside that is driving you to act on something that you just can't shake, period.
Right,
so I'm glad you're transparent, because, that has happened throughout history for many people. And if most of these people didn't act on it, we wouldn't be where we are as a people in general in the world. Now, let's talk about your research, and let's talk about those pillars. You said you have 11 pillars. Okay.
Right.
You define those pillars, and also through your research, like, it seems to me that you had an idea. You're like, look, I got to write about this, but you went from businessman to researcher, like overnight, or like within the same night, it seems like.
Yeah.
And so what was that like for you to not only just feel compelled to write about this, but as you're researching, it's like affirming what you think is the issue. You're like, wait a minute, this really is happening. Can you touch on that as well? So I'm asking you a few things here. See if you can touch on all of that.
Yeah. So I tried to remember that. I'll call it a promise, like right from the heart and it'll flow. That when I had that, how am I going to do this? Write it from the heart and it will flow. And so I tried to not overthink it. Like I'm a very organized. Normally, I'm a super detail oriented. I have a background in programming and database design and things like that before I got into marketing and things I did later in life. So what I'm trying to say is I have that very detailed, step by step, skip no step type of methodology that is my go-to. But on this one, I let go of that because it was the whole thing with the idea of flowing with this. And so what I would do is I would just take like say one of the pillars, and I would just start doing all kinds of web searches to see what I could learn. And then that would take you, from one thing to another thing to another thing. And then I would just type bullet points, not try to write anything, just type in bullet points and links, saving the links to these things. And then I would just think about, how do you put that together? And I would just rearrange the bullet points, and then I would just start writing. So it's more like a stream of consciousness, and then go back and clean it up. But so I've showed it to people who have written books, and they say that is an incredibly productive time period you have to crank out that many pages in about 3.5 months with the level of quality and all the links, and you know what I mean. So I really felt like I had some help, even though it's certainly not perfect. I mean, I had on my website globalcollapsebook.com. There, you can learn about the book, but there's a tab there that says edits. And I had one important retraction I had to make. But again, I'm trying to be transparent. But, so I posted that retraction there. So if anybody does get the book, be sure you read the one retraction. But that's out of 175 sources. So, I mean, it was humbling, but like, hey, even the New York Times posts retractions, right? Except they hide them, they bury them. Mine's right in the main menu, easy to find. But I'm trying to say is, it was a process that flowed, super highly productive, and I just kept learning things along the way that were mind blowing. One of the most mind blowing things to me was the realization that the open borders attack on America, and the district attorneys that are not prosecuting crime, the things that the illegals are getting away with. This is happening all throughout Western Europe. It's happening in Australia, New Zealand. Some of these things are happening in Canada. So this was a worldwide coordinated effort. It blew my mind how consistent it is. The illegals getting free hotel, free food. The American or not American, the American or British or German people being almost punished for pushing back against what's going on, for pointing out the injustice. Except in the UK, they're actually throwing them in jail. In Germany, they're throwing some of them in jail. So somebody gets raped, the person complains about it, the rapist gets less time than the person who complained. I mean, it's nuts. But, you could see the parallel in the US, like the heavy hand that Biden was starting to implement. Remember the famous fiery speech at night with the red, all lit up red in the background, and the Marines, in the background there too. It had this kind of Hitlerian feel to it. And he was talking about how MAGA was the big danger in the country. He was setting it up to persecute and imprison, I think, anybody on the right. I think that's where this was heading, as hard as that is to believe in the United States. He was pushing it there. I mean, he wasn't writing his speeches. We all know that, right? Whoever was handling him was pushing it this way. And we know now, it's been uncovered, what the FBI, who they were spying on and whose phones were being tapped, and the setup with the Jan Sixers, and going to prison for 4 years without a trial. Some of them never got a trial of their peers or any other kind of trial. I mean, just blatant violations of the U.S. Constitution, heavy-handed, similar things going on all over Europe. It amazed me.
And we're getting close to following the UK and censoring people on social media. It seems like they're cracking down on that more and more here in the U.S. It's only a matter of time before we start seeing U.S. citizens arrested for making posts on X or Facebook or whatever it is that they don't agree with. I hope that doesn't happen, but it seems like we're getting closer. It feels that way. Does it ever, when you were going through all this, I mean, not that any of this is it's not evidence, but what I find crazy is it feels like right now that the UK literally took George Orwell's 1984 as a playbook, and they're living it out right now in the UK. And I didn't want to believe that because it's a cliche thing that like everybody says it, like, oh, well, we're living in 1984. And I go back to that book and watch what's happening in the UK right now, what the Starmer's doing and what's happening. I'm like, that's pretty much the book. It's crazy.
It's unbelievable. Like it was prophetic. Like he knew. I mean, there's some people that claim that 1984 was written as a warning, that he was an insider who actually knew where the globalists were heading with this.
Maybe.
And he was putting it out there as a novel, but as a warning.
So what else did you find when you were doing your research? So let's get back to the pillars. So let's define those pillars. Let's define, because you said before that there was 11 pillars, I believe, right?
Yeah, you just want me to read the names of the 11?
Sure. You know why? I want to. So when you did your research, you identified 11 pillars, right, that were going to be attacked or would be the focus. And right. I want you to please, for everybody who obviously hasn't read your book yet, we want them to. But if you could define those 11 pillars and why those pillars are important for you to be able to focus on and look those things up as you did to support your arguments. Because I think a lot of people need to understand what those pillars are. And then because by defining those and also through our conversation, it's like, I think a light bulb's going to open. They're like, oh, wow, okay, this makes a lot more sense. So if you could define those for us, starting with the first pillar, and just give us a little background.
Is it okay if I share my screen with you?
You can do whatever you like.
Okay, so this is from globalcollapsebook.com. And you can see at the top is the 11 pillars tab. You're seeing that, right? Just want to make sure that share is working. Okay. So pillar number 1 is national borders. And again, these are all being worked on to tear them down. And this was written before Trump came into power, but obviously we're dealing with the effects of this right now. National borders. Number 2, security and police protection. 3 is privacy. 4 is banking and finance, the whole system. 5 is education. 6 is energy. 7 is the environment, but not in the way we think about it. It's not polar bears and ice caps. It's more the air that we breathe and the food that we eat in terms of the harmful nature of it. In particular, those things. Medical system, number 8. Food supply, number 9. Self-identity. This one surprised me. These were the last two. Self-identity and faith are actually pillars of society. And so these pillars are all things that are required to support a complex and free society, complex and free. And that's why religion is in there. And I believe in hindsight, after this came to me, and self-identity as well, we see what's going on there. But, with what they're doing with the children in particular, confusing them as to their identity. But that one, just while I'm mentioning it, the book gets mainly into sexual identity, especially for children, but it also gets into just the male identity itself and the female identity. Like, what does it mean to be male? What does it mean to be female? And the whole, all the repercussions of that are part of that pillar.
So in researching these pillars and how they're being attacked, these pillars are really a guideline on how to take down a system, take down a culture, right?
They're what's supporting the culture.
Absolutely.
You take them down, the culture comes down, and the whole society comes down.
So have you been able to identify the globalists themselves in all your research? Like, it sounds like everything that you've done points to supporting, yes, there is a globalist organization. And a lot of, it's easy to point towards, like, Klaus Schwab, for example. A lot of the things that he said in the past were ridiculous, and they had all these elitists there just lapping it up, right? And people would say, "What do you mean eating the bugs or controlling the money, or you're not gonna own anything and like it?" This is all example of a globalist organization trying to manipulate the world and get all these all these nation states to comply, right? So, in your findings, did you find a lot of this to be true, or at least point towards that direction?
Oh yeah, I mean, I came across all kinds of evidence, from the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab in particular are a really rich source of information as to what the globalist mindset is, because they talk about it. There's a section in the book on Event 201 and the planning for that, which was a rehearsal for the crisis that happened in 2020, where they were putting things in our arms. I won't say it in case
crisis?
that gets you next.
I don't care.
But you know what I'm talking about.
I've had Nicholas Holscher on the show. I've had plenty other discussions. You can say whatever you like.
Yeah. So that was a dress rehearsal, and there's a link to it, the QR code that'll take you right to the video summary. It's about I think it's an 11-minute highlight, and they're proud of it. But it includes they're actors, but they're acting out newscasts. It was like they were prophetic in how accurately they nailed how the public was going to react.
That's crazy.
How the resistance there was going to be, and how they were going to basically coerce them into going along with it. It was incredibly prophetic, and it happened in 2019, right before the pandemic.
And this was a completely rehearsed.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Let me see here.
So blatantly planned.
Oh, blatantly planned. Yeah. They would never admit it. It's just an amazing coincidence that they thought of this. They were just so insightful that they thought of this. Let me see.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to jump here.
You want to share your screen again?
Yeah.
Sure.
There we go.
All
so
right.
this is Event 201. This is just my hard copy of the book, I guess you'd say, my Word document.
And then I saw you had, when you scroll down, there's that QR code that will take people right to that video.
It'll take you right to this video.
Okay.
That's the highlights reel.
Interesting.
But yeah, it talks about, you can see it here. It was it was called the Global Pandemic Exercise, hosted by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on October 18th, 2019, just months prior to the pandemic. It was like a dress rehearsal for they called it a potential future global COVID pandemic. They even said the word.
Potential
complete with
future.
World leaders and members of World Economic Forum role-playing as news anchors and government officials. I mean, it's just, you got to go there with the QR code and check it out. But that blew my mind. I did not know that.
That is crazy. So they're telegraphing everything blatantly and do not even care. And of course, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Why wouldn't it be? I mean, what's crazy about that is truth is stranger than fiction, literally, right?
Yes.
And so with that, since we're talking about it, hell, why not? You did the research. So where's Fauci connected in all of this? Because it seems like, okay, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? You've got Klaus Schwab and his cronies involved, and they did this rehearsal. Where does Fauci fall in? Is he controlled by the World Economic Forum or by Bill and Melinda Gates, or I mean, what's his involvement? Do you think? I don't know if you found anything, but what do you?
It's hard to say because they'll never admit anything. But
any breadcrumbs?
But he is a kingpin. I believe he's a king. He has to be one of the masterminds, at least in terms of the medical side of it. For him to be able to, like he knew, it's been proven now. Rand Paul wrote a book about Fauci, which is worth checking out. But Rand Paul believes he knew ahead of time that, for example, that remdesivir, which Fauci recommended as the protocol in which the hospitals followed. So he basically was able to pressure hospitals and the whole medical system into going with his protocol, which was remdesivir. And he knew from prior experience that remdesivir has like a 50% kill rate. That once you go on remdesivir, you typically die within days. I mean, it shuts down your liver and kidneys, and he knew this. And so,
and didn't he have a stake in remdesivir? Wasn't he
yeah, I believe so. And there's a section in the book that says, who are the globalists and what do they want?
Okay.
Right. And out of all the things they want, the one that's the hardest to accept and that you'll get the most pushback, even from yourself when you know the truth from having read it, let's say, it's still psychologically very hard to accept the idea that they do want to reduce the world population. I mean, they've been saying this for years.
That's been stated for years, by many
decades and decades. Getting the world population down to a manageable place, and that's what this pandemic was designed to do.
I believe you're right.
Not just to lower the population immediately, but to lower it long term by affecting the fertility rates. The fertility rates of people who went along with the program, so to speak, are much lower. There's been so many studies that show this. In the fertility rates in women, the rates at which once they become pregnant, they're unable to deliver, that's going way up. So it's a way to bring world population down by kind of cutting the fertility rate in a major way.
Because you just can't go out and shoot people right on the street.
Right, not yet. So hopefully never.
Might as well stop them from reproducing.
Yeah, that was shocking. That was
crazy.
The proof for that's pretty shocking. There's a study that was done for the Southern Hemisphere, Australia, and several other countries that showed because they have better records than we do, and they showed a direct correlation between not as much the first time they took the thing, but with the boosters, there was a direct parallel between the increasing death rate and the booster rate. The graph moved in harmony with each other. It was striking, but that's in there. That's that's from, I think that's is that the one that's a 175-page report. I'm not sure, but the graph is in the book, and it's an exhaustive study. They call it all-cause mortality. Like,
It's
just forget everything else. Look at the correlation between
I
what
think
happened and
what you're saying
all
is
cause. Yeah.
spot on. I believe that was one part of the COVID pandemic. The other was testing the people to see how far they can push them and get away with things in terms of control.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So I think there was a two-pronged attack there. It was let's see if this works so we could thin out the herd, but also see how compliant people will be. What's their level of tolerance, right? So I think that was another factor of it. Did you find anything else related to the COVID pandemic that maybe we should know about that wasn't spoken of before? Anything else that would like blow our minds here,
Um.
or do we just have to read it?
Yeah, I'm
I'd ask you to give the whole book away.
I'm having trouble thinking about what else would really jump out, because there's been so much in the
Since
news,
then,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? And
Especially now, right? There's been more and more stories coming out.
the mask is off,
True.
so to speak.
True. Yeah, I get it. Let's talk about the other things that are going on right now that are extremely relevant. I know there's 11 pillars, but the two that are right now so evident is the borders that you brought up and the banking system.
Yeah.
Let's touch on borders first. Yeah, let's touch on that.
Yeah, so the thing with the national borders is, I don't know if you remember in Trump's first term, the U.S. was being pressured to take refugees who were flooding into Europe. They had been flooding into Europe since 2011 with the fall of Gaddafi.
Yes,
that was the first wave, and then with all the problems in Syria, that was the second wave. And so, remember, Trump cut off everybody from the Muslim world, basically, pretty much. Any country that had a problem with terrorism or anything like that, he cut that off in the first term. So our border was pretty much sealed in the first term from that danger. But Europe, it was flooding in the whole time. And then when Biden was debating Trump prior to Biden's first term, he famously said, "I would tell them to surge the border," in his speech. And there's a link to that audio or video in the book, QR code link. And so Biden was saying it out loud. "I would tell everyone to surge the border, come on in." And what was striking to me is the amount of people that were coming in is far more than what most people realize. Like, people who are really up on this understand it, but I think it would be shocking to most people to realize that during Biden's time in office, roughly on average, every 6 weeks, the equivalent of the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, came into this country. And these are mostly unskilled, third world people that we are just paying for, and that are draining our school systems, our hospital systems, our welfare system, just draining the system at a pace that's unbelievable. I mean, can you imagine if we had a new city in this country every 6 weeks? And that's pretty much what we had, except they weren't actually cities. They're just going into everything else. Unsustainable. It's a shocking pace. That just blew my mind.
You know what's interesting about the border situation, because I've done multiple shows on this and I've done the deep dive into the statistics. I'm going to talk about just this year alone. There absolutely was a plan, because first off, let's go back to Obama. He opened the floodgates to immigrants of the Muslim world, period, especially with Somalia. So it started there. And then let's look at what's happening now. So as of, when was the last time I did this? I think May of this year or so, the statistics on the Border Patrol website. There's a lot that people don't know because it's not being reported, but it's available. People just aren't looking, right? There was enough terrorists that they caught. This is known, meaning they actually apprehended. There was enough that came across our borders just this year, as of, I believe it was May, to put 15 terrorists in every state of America.
Oh, yeah, I
15.
believe that.
You could see the damage of what just one could do. But 15 in every state. That's the ones they know of, the ones they caught.
And the fact that most of these people really are military-aged men. These aren't families coming over for the most part. There's some, but mostly military-aged men. Now, who does that?
Yeah,
Hey, mom and dad, I'm going off to America. See you later.
right.
And that's pretty much everyone that's coming in. Obviously, that's a plan.
And the border situation isn't just like you discussed earlier with me. It's not just America. Like we just discussed what's going on in the UK, right? In Europe. So and it's all aligns with what's going on now. So Trump was successful in shutting it down, and we can do that. But the UK has not followed suit yet. France is still in trouble. Italy's been overrun. S and it's hard to not look at everything and think there isn't some plan. Like, why is there an intentional displacement of people who've already settled the lands and where they already have an established culture? Makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, well, it only makes sense if it is planned. There's a
Exactly.
then all of a sudden it makes sense. So there's a section of the book about replacement migration,
Right.
and that is an actual thing. And there's on the left there's news reports that try to say that doesn't exist. Well, the I'll call it the inconvenient truth is that the UN has it right on their website. They have a 177-page report that I linked to, done in 2021. The title of it is Replacement Migration. That's the title of the report, UN Replacement Migration Report. And in that report, it has the targets for all the different countries, the goals for France, Germany, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Russia, UK, US, Europe, the European Union. So, like I say in the book, yeah, replacement migration really is a thing with them, with these globalists.
You know,
They mean it.
I have that document saved myself. I found that document. And I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people don't even know that exists. They think, oh, you're just being a conspiracy theorist if you bring this up. But no, it's actually on their web. It's in their archive. It's right there.
Yeah.
You know,
Did
And-
you see Senator John Kennedy, the older guy who's always like cracking jokes, and he's got the Southern accent, and he said something like, um, we got to come up with some new conspiracy theories because the old ones are coming true. He said, the way I see it, it's if this were a football game, it'd be conspiracy theorist 37, everyone else 0.
That's funny. You know what? What's crazy, Alan, is I give my wife crap all the time because she's big into conspiracy. Like she's not a conspiracy theorist, but she'll go down these rabbit holes of conspiracy sometimes. I play with her. But then I
Yeah.
step back and I'm like what you just said or what Kenny said. I was like, yeah, there's a lot that we assume to be just a bunch of BS that actually came to pass.
Right.
And the percentage of what's true versus like you could tell when there's a conspiracy that someone's just trying to get attention. Some keyboard warrior somewhere just trying to make something up to get attention.
Sure.
But when you're able to repeatedly correlate an action to a rumor time and time again, at what point is it still a conspiracy?
Yeah, well, it's like they say, these days, what's the difference between a conspiracy theory and a conspiracy fact?
Right.
About 6 months. About 6 months. That's the difference.
Interesting. And so let's talk about walking that line when you did this book. I mean, was there any point in where you thought yourself you're becoming a conspiracy theorist, or were you ever thinking about going down that road and dangerously just being labeled the conspiracy guy? Or after your findings, you're like, no, there's enough evidence here to debunk it just being a theory.
Oh yeah, totally enough evidence. And so I tested this on a friend of mine, an older lady who knew nothing about this. Now she is a friend, so I guess maybe she was more open to reading the book than just your average person who knew nothing about it would be. But I gave it to her to read, and she's like, "Oh my gosh!" She said, "I didn't know anything about this, but now that I see what's going on, I realize I have a lot of things I have to change in my life." She was blown away, and now she's doing her own research. But that's the thing about the book is I call it a general approach. It kind of walks you through just the line of thinking, like, yeah, who are the globalists and what do they want, and can they really pull it off? And we get into how they could, their positions of power, influence, get into some of their documents and what they're saying out loud, and then the crazy things like with Bill Gates, who happens to be the largest independent donor to the World Health Organization. And he's also the one who's behind, a lot of these VAXs. And he talks about, in his famous TED Talk, which I link to, if we do a good job with vaccines and some other things, we might be able to reduce the world population by 10 to 15%. He says it out loud. And he's the one behind these mosquitoes that are being released in Florida to, basically vaccinate people too through that. And he's behind the fake meat. And he bought 70 million acres of trees, forest land, Western forest, or 7 million. I think it's 7 million. 7 million acres of Western forest to basically cut it down and bury the trees in the name of climate. And he's also behind, a lot of this seeding, climate seeding that's done through the chemtrails and everything, which is another thing. I didn't believe in chemtrails. I came across that in the book and the research.
Hold on.
That was a mind blower.
You didn't believe in them at first?
No, I didn't believe. Going into it, I thought that
my wife is going to be so happy with this segment because she was a chemtrail. Like, she's been calling that out for years.
Oh, oh my gosh, the book has a QR code that takes you to the website geoengineeringwatch.org, and they have a documentary called "The Dimming," and it talks about how they're dispersing these chemicals in the atmosphere to dim the atmosphere to reflect the light back out into space, so that the Earth will be cooler. That's their excuse, but in the process, these chemtrails have been tested. They took a NOAA plane into them, which has the instruments needed to actually test the atmosphere, up into these chemtrails being released from these jets, and they found toxic levels of barium, strontium, and aluminum, which are all toxic to humans and mammals and are bad for the plants, and they're horrible for the insect population. And they found even in that doing the research here on the chemtrails themselves, we found that the toxic levels of aluminum are actually affecting the bee population and causing like a form of dementia in the bees where they don't know how to do their job. And that's why one of the reasons they're dying off so much. It's like, what's going on with the bees? And I came to find, and there's, if you remember, let me see if I can find it here. Okay, if we go back to this one here, the symbol for the environment, you see the Volkswagen bug with the bugs all over the windshield. So this was like a hunch. And this is where I think of like, this thing where I felt like God was kind of leading me through some of this stuff, like just let it flow. I'm thinking about the environment and this thing pops in my head. It's like, why are there so many less bugs on my windshield today than when I was a kid? When I was a kid, I mean, you almost had to get an ice scraper when you went on vacation by the time you got where you were going to get all the bugs off your windshield and your headlight and your grill and your hood. And now today I can take a 3-hour drive to the beach and there's hardly a bug on my windshield. And it's like, why is that? And that was like my starting point for jumping into that chapter. Come to find out that in the last 27 years, there's been a 75% reduction in the flying insect biomass in the world. 75%. So it's not just my imagination. There really are less bugs on our windshields, but that's the result of the geoengineering that they've been doing.
It's crazy what you say about the bees because we've noticed that in the last few years. We have a ton of bees in our yard. We have these like giant flowering bushes. They have like these orange flowers, and they actually flower all year. They're not necessarily seasonal. So we got hummingbirds, bees. Everything is back in our. It's like wild geographic back here. Literally is. So anyway, I've noticed that the bees. There's times where we see the behavior where they're doing some weird things. Some of them seem like they're disoriented. All of a sudden, some of them dive for water for some reason. Want to dive into our pool, and then we try to save them, take them out, and they go right back in. Like they're doing some weird stuff.
Oh wow!
And so we've noticed this ourselves. Like Some of the bees look like they're confused. They'll land on the ground all of a sudden and can't. It's almost like they don't know how to walk or where they're at. It's some strange stuff. Now I'm not making any of this up. This is something that we have seen. And so when you brought up how that is affecting the bees, it kind of just resonated with me because I've seen that behavior in bees in general, which is crazy. Seems like it more specifically seems to affect the honeybees. Not like the larger bumblebees or carpenter bees or anything like that. More like the honeybees, for example.
That's interesting.
Seems to affect them more than the other bees that we see flying around, which is strange. So that's an interesting one. So that was that pillar of environment is literally like chemtrails is one example of how they're manipulating the environment around us to control us through our environment. I mean, vis-a-vis what? Our health, right? Because that stuff's all going to affect our health. And part of that environment would be what? The food control. Just as Bill Gates is trying to control the food, we have Monsanto has, with their patented seeds, where they've had all these fights with farmers. It's crazy.
It affects the soil itself. So these chemtrails actually affect the makeup of the soil, and the soil is something like, I think it's 10 times more alkaline than it should be. And so then that requires you to use more fertilizer. And then the more fertilizer you use, that causes problems, causes fungus and all kinds of other things where then you have to treat that. So the soil no longer has as much of the microbiology in it as it used to because of all the stuff falling on it constantly. We're breathing it in too. We're breathing in the aluminum and everything else. But it makes the soil more compact. It's less. It's harder. It's not as aerated, and then you add on top of that the chemicals, the Roundup type stuff that's used to kill the fields when they're done with that harvesting season.
Right.
And then that residues there going into your food, and we're getting it in our wheat and in our oats and in other things, and that doesn't even get into the chemicals that now they're giving the livestock, the MNRA shots that they're giving them,
Yes.
And altering their DNA. I mean, a lot of the the bioengineered food. If you shop anywhere in the center of the grocery store, pick up a pack of crackers, pick up a pack of box of cereal, and look in the ingredients. Look underneath the last ingredient, like an inch down. It'll say contains bioengineered products.
Yeah,
whatever.
We've noticed that. We have.
It's almost everywhere. Even a can of soup. It's hard to find a can of soup that doesn't say contains bioengineered ingredients. So bioengineered means they're messing with the DNA of the food. It literally means that.
Well, and to your point, also is beyond just being bioengineered. They won't even define what those ingredients are. It's just a little blanket statement. Bioengineered ingredients. Well, of what? What is it? What composed of what? What does it contain?
What exactly is bioengineered?
Yeah. So they're leaving that on the table as well. And so all of this is coming together. How long do you think this plan's been going on?
Oh, it's been going on, I think, since the end of World War II at some level. That's when the weather manipulation began. If you think about when a lot of the really big tech and inventions came about, that was right around the World War II period. Now, of course, we've had major computer innovations, computer chips, miniaturization. It keeps accelerating in some ways, but if you think about World War II and like the we'll call it the brilliance of the German engineers. I mean, they were using it for evil, but they had all the high tech. They had, they were the first with the U-boats, the submarines. Basically, they were the first with. They had a thing called the flying wing. I don't know if you ever saw that. It's like a flying wedge triangle. It looks a lot like our B-2 bomber. Huh. They had that in a version of that design in World War II. They were the ones with all the rocketry. It was the German engineers that came over.
I don't know if you came across any of that in your research, or if on an aside you went down that rabbit hole. But isn't it interesting how all of the technology, or most of the advanced technology we have, came after World War II?
Yeah, a lot of it did.
Is it really innovations of war, or was it aliens? I don't know. Another conspiracy.
Yeah, I know a lot of people go down
I'm
the
just throwing
alien
that
black
out
hole.
there.
I have not gone there on purpose. I don't believe it, to be honest with
Fair
you.
enough.
But yeah, no, I think that, and this isn't what this is about, but just
No,
as a
it's
little
not. But
fun aside here.
it is interesting that throughout human history,
Yeah.
all of a sudden there was this major advancement after World War II and or around that era.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
it
Well,
wasn't
the
a small
German
jump.
engineers were brilliant. They were just absolutely brilliant. I mean, people forget about German engineering because then Japan came along later, and then it was Japanese engineering, and but for a long time it was German engineering was like the focal point. Like when they said BMW, the ultimate driving machine,
Right.
that really stuck for a while because people had that image of German engineering being so much better. But yeah, they did some incredible things, and I think there's a good case to be made, talking about a rabbit hole, that there really was what you could describe as a breakaway civilization that happened, a technocratic civilization where they've invented things that are far beyond the tech that we get to see, that they've invented anti-gravity, the things we call flying saucers and, moving at high speed and making a 90-degree right turn and then disappearing, things like that. I've heard some pretty convincing arguments that tech exists and it's man-made tech. It's been hidden from the rest of us.
Yeah.
You figure how fast these German engineers were advancing just in World War II, and those came over to the U.S. Some went to Europe.
Yes.
Russia, I think, got a few of them, but mainly the U.S. got them, and they went into the NASA program. And it's if you think about that pace that they were on, if all of society would have had access to that level of engineering and discovery that was going on, where would we be today? I mean, somebody brought up that the planes we're using today, the jets we're flying in, are flying at the same speed they flew in like 1960, like the average commercial aircraft. It's pretty much, it's almost like we've been stuck in a lot of ways.
I think, look, I know this isn't exactly what your book's about, but it's an interesting conversation and it allows us to get to know you a little bit more. But here's the reality though. I know this because I've met other military personnel and people who have served, some on the show, some not on the show. I never forgot this conversation I had with this one fellow, and this is way back, for me anyway. And he got to talking to me, and we had this conversation. And he served in the army, but what he did, he was in engineering, and he was in development. I don't remember everything to a T, but basically, the army intelligence back then were working on inventing weapons where they were using laser technologies and whatnot as weaponry on tanks and other systems. Just in the early 70s back then.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. I think a lot of this technology that we've had for a long time, but we're always going to be behind the curve. Okay, they're slowly going to trickle out to society what they've already mastered and moved on from. I mean, they're not going to give us the best they have, because what if we do decide to uprise and overthrow our oppressors? I guess I don't know. But anyway, if that were ever to happen, they want to have the better weapon or better technology, right? But and this itself sounds like we're getting conspiratorial, but it's not. The military has technology that we're not going to see till years down the road. Period, and that's just how it is. So I agree with you. We did have this technology. We're just seeing it now, and I think we're probably about 10 to 15 years behind what's already been developed.
Oh yeah,
my theory.
Yeah, I agree. All right, where do we want to go?
I don't know, man. We discussed a lot here, and just really comes down to, if there's anything else that you wanted to highlight that you found or researched, if we need to just tell people to buy your damn book and read it.
Well, while I'm looking for the next thing, if you want to go to globalcollapsebook.com,
right,
and you can click on that 11 pillars if you want to see the 11 pillars. But one thing I just want to say real quick, I'm all in on trying to get this message out.
Right.
And on the website, you can get a signed copy of the book for about the same price as an unsigned copy on Amazon. And it's also available in sets of 3, 6, 12, and 18. There are people buying them in sets to kind of get the word out. So if you have like a friend, a relative, a spouse, whatever, who just doesn't get it in terms of what's going on in the world, this book is an eye opener. And so the holidays are coming. It's a pretty cool gift to give somebody a signed copy of a book, right? And you can get it pretty cheap. So check it out. Also on the website, you can let me do the share here just to show you where it
Sure.
is. Yeah, you can not only get signed copies, but you can also um, read the intro for free, and you can hear the intro because it's also available on audiobook. But you can hear the intro to the book, and if you want to read the first collapse chapter for free, which is the Borders chapter, just fill that out and click read now. It'll take you to a landing page where you can actually read that. But yeah, my whole thing is to get the word out. But as far as the pillars that I felt were the most concerning at the moment, that would be banking and finance, and also the food supply. What was happening with the food supply? The banking and finance pillar. I think most people do not understand how fragile our banking system is. At the time I wrote the book, I was shocked to learn that the national debt was increasing by $1 trillion every 100 days on average. That was when I wrote the book in 2024. The last $1 trillion was added in only 79 days. So we're exponentially getting deeper and deeper into debt at a rate that we can't pay it off. And if something isn't done, that system will come down. I believe that system will collapse under its own weight. And yeah,
So through your research, what do you think is the reason behind it? Like, why would they want to collapse the banking systems?
so it's part of the goal to just collapse everything, to totally destabilize society, so that they can create their new world order out of the ashes, on the ashes. That's a big picture. But you would say, why the banking? So um, the banking is basically the chokehold on all of society. The banking system is the money supply. So if you can collapse that banking system, then you'll be in a position where you can be in a strong position to introduce the next thing, which could be a central bank digital currency. It could be a worldwide digital currency.
Okay, because
But that makes it so that you're desperate because the whole system just crashed. How am I going to buy anything? How am I going to get my food? How am I whatever? How am I going to pay my taxes? Even so. That is on a razor's edge. And the way they did that in America was they held the interest rates down to near zero for a decade or more. And, the banks could borrow money from the Fed, the overnight rate and everything was near zero. And we were in this low interest environment where the banks actually had extra cash. So what they did with their money is invested it in treasury bills and treasury notes that typically paid 0.5%, maybe 1%, maybe 1.5%, depending on when they bought them and how long the term was. Then the Fed cranked the rate up to 5% in a period of months. And people don't understand this, but when you have a treasury bill of some sort, the value of that bill is the interest rate. So say you had $100,000 treasury bill and it had an interest rate of 1%. That means you get $1,000 a year, 1% of 100,000. You get 1,000 a year. So say the banks had them at 1%. Now the value of that again is 1,000 a year. Now when the rate goes up to 5%, you need 5 of those $100,000 notes to match one new note that's paying
yeah,
5%. So if there's a run on the bank and your people are cashing in saying, I want my money, they have to cash in their treasury notes and take a loss of an 80% in that example. They take an 80% hit. So they're underwater. And these are mostly the regional banks that are in this situation. So what could happen is if if there started to be a run on the bank, these regional banks would collapse like a house of cards. And then the too big to fails would buy them all up. And then you have a handful of too big to fail banks that are in control of the entire banking system. And that now introducing a central bank digital currency is much easier because you only have a handful instead of thousands. So we're close to that possibility.
Yeah.
And I just recommend that people do two things. And I'm not a financial advisor, but just use your own common sense. Number one is to, if you have some money in the bank and it's a significant amount, spread it out among several bank accounts, including a credit union. So if they start going down, they're probably not all going to collapse at the same moment. You'll still be able to get your money out of some of them, right? The other thing to consider doing is convert some of your cash to silver or maybe gold if you have a lot. Because the line of thinking goes, it gives you two things. It gives you, if there were a hard crash, you would have something to barter with. But the other thing you would have on the other side, when the new currency comes out, whatever that would be, you would have something you can convert to that currency, as opposed to paper dollar bills that will be worth zero if that currency collapses.
Yeah, but they're already making it to where we can't even spend that paper. There's a lot of merchants that don't even want to deal with cash at all.
Yeah.
Our dollar was further devalued during the COVID pandemic when we were just printing money for like, how could you just blatantly print millions, billions of dollars without anything to back it that will actually hold its value? Because we got off the gold standard years ago. And
right, 71.
Yeah, and as far as runs on the bank, I mean, we've already seen that example in Greece. A lot of people forgot years ago the Greeks were in trouble. They had that run on the banks. It also, well, if I got the right country, it was either Venezuela or Argentina. One of those where that also happened. And then look at what happened here in California, the Silicon Valley Bank that went under because of all the rumors of what was happening and people were trying to get their money out. And then there you go. That was another example in recent history. And you can correct me if I'm hovering.
No, you're right. Just want to say, remember the 2008 banking crisis where, there was a 40% loss in most people's
everyone's homes just tanked.
Retirement accounts.
Yeah.
Well, the book gets into this. When Silicon Valley Bank went down, that was on March 10th, 2023. That was $209 billion. 2 days later, Signature Bank in New York went down. That was $110 billion.
That's right. I forgot about that
bailout. And then on May 1st, $229 billion, First Republic Bank of San Francisco. Those three banks were the equivalent in losses for the FDIC of the entire 2008 crisis, right? With just those three banks alone. So that shows how quickly, and the other thing most people don't know, they say, well, the FDIC guarantees it up to $250,000. Yeah, but they have less than 1% of all bank deposits is what they have to the money they're insuring. Really? I mean, the money they have reserved is equal to less than 1% of all the bank deposits in the U.S. So if there's a run,
it's crazy.
You're not going to be insured up to $250. You might be insured up to like $10,000 or something like that.
Yeah,
people are going to take a major haircut if there's a run on the bank.
It's nuts. And then our banking system's also turned away from, you used to be able to actually earn real interest on your accounts. Now you can't. I mean, you can invest in your money markets or high interest accounts, but even those interest rates for me, for example, and you have gone down from what they used to be. Yet the banks themselves can trade at higher interest rates, get loans at low interest rates for themselves so they can make money on our money. Like a lot of people don't understand that banks are using our money to make money. And in return, what are we really getting out of it? Not much outside of being able to write a business check, do transfers. I don't know. It's not really a whole lot they're doing for you outside of that.
Well, since 2008, a lot of people don't know this. You probably do. Maybe a lot of your listeners do. But you really don't technically legally own the money in your bank. The bank owns the money and they owe you the money back. They're actually the owners. So, and this was done because they knew in 2008, if this happened again, the government would not be able to bail them out. So it's called a bail-in. And it means they have the legal right to take your money, and if they have to do it to stay afloat, and out of the goodness of their heart, they'll give us bank stock, which will be basically worthless.
Yeah, and
anything. Thanks for your $50K. Here's 50K in bank stock. Have a nice day.
Another thing to speak, like you're a business owner, right? So am I. I've owned a few, still have one, 27 years going. And anytime I need to take any sum of money out in cash, they question every little reason why I need to take it. What are you using it for? And they try to tie that towards the I forgot the actual act that was passed, but basically trying to track down whether
know your customer.
Well, no, there's that, but they're also trying. Well, yeah, exactly. But they're trying to see if you're a terrorist, if you're buying things. Yeah. So they say that's what it's for, but we know it's not. They're just literally controlling. Like they don't want
their money.
Yeah, they don't want to tell you. Well, you put a $200,000 in here the other week, but I can't give you 20,000 cash because they really can't afford to. Realistically, if everybody starts doing this, like you said, that's defining the run of the bank. They don't have the physical money to give you. It's all digital currency already. And so what's crazy about this pillar we're discussing, now we're seeing the UK trying to implement this digital ID. Yes. And where they tie all your information, including your banking information, to this digital ID, which will be government controlled. You're giving away your rights to your privacy now. In the UK, that's happening. Or at least they're trying to implement it.
Did you see that little speech by Keir Starmer, the head of the UK, the other day?
I did not.
Oh my gosh, that was chilling. And he was, I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something like, and let me be perfectly clear, you know how they say everything over there.
Right.
And let me be perfectly clear, you won't be able to, he lists all the things you won't be able to do without your digital ID. He's saying, you have no choice here. That's what I heard. That's how I understood it.
Interesting.
You have no choice. We're doing this. If you don't go along, you'll be on the outside and you won't be able to manage your life. That was pretty much the message.
And then tie that to what's going on with taking away right to bear arms or gun ownership. Like already in the UK, you can't do that. It didn't fix anything. We still have a murder rate in the UK per capita that's really close to, if not exceeding the USA, and we have guns, which is crazy. And yes, I can verify that because I actually did a whole show where I did a deep dive on that.
Okay.
The other thing is you have Canada right now telling their citizens you don't have an option. You're doing a gun buyback. So that's happening.
Yeah.
Australia already got rid of gun ownership
years ago. Yeah,
exactly. So what I'm doing is enforcing your research or supporting it in the fact that you have this book where you compelled to write this based on this feeling you had, and in doing this research, you're literally able to say, no, this is really happening, guys. Wake up. And then we look around at everything happening. I never thought in my lifetime that I'd be seeing this stuff. It's almost biblical, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I look around and it's so easy. Like everything you're telling me, it's like, wait, the bank, you're right. That's happening. This is happening. Look at what's happening in Europe. Look at what's happening in the USA. There's a lot that you're saying that I know is in your book with all the QR codes that you can just go right to where you found the information. That right now in this world, what's happening is this book is like, it's crazy that you put this out. Let's just put it that way. I can't really find the words to find it. It's just strange. It's strange how how coincidental all this is right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was blown away by the research, and the more you learn, the more you realize there's more you could learn. Like you keep going, you keep digging and digging. And so I listened to other podcasts and of course news and everything. And you start, once you know the 11 core pillars, it's really easy to start tying events to one of those 11. And I've said this on other podcasts, but I think this is really important to keep in mind. I don't think this was given to me as just like a fact to share. Like, okay, they're trying to tear this down. I believe the reason it was given to me would be to raise awareness of these 11 pillars and what's being done so that we can push back and say no, so that we can strengthen them. So hopefully some people in power will get a copy of the 11 pillars and start getting a strategy to strengthen each one of the 11 pillars. I think on national borders, some real actions being done to try to get, the illegals out of here, starting with the troublemakers, and to seal the border. So that's America. But the rest of the world, nothing's happening. It just strengthened their.
You know what I think, right? Allan? I think a lot of people in power know these things.
Yeah.
But here's where your book comes in. I believe that the pressure starts from the bottom, and we kind of live in a giant pyramid in terms of how we live our lives. We have the people at the top, you have us down here, and the more knowledgeable we become, and the more that we make it really hard for the people up top, eventually they're going to have to make that change. They're going to be forced to make that change because they realize they can no longer control everybody else beneath them. So this book's important regardless. Regardless who reads it, it's going to be valuable knowledge. And the fact that you can actually point to the data and where you got things so people can say, oh, he's just not talking out his ass. He actually looked this up and he went down the rabbit hole and here's the info. So awesome talking to you. And I need a copy too, by the way. I'm going to get one. I'm going to have that displayed back here. So thank you for your time and helping us understand everything. And this is a great conversation. I could talk to you for a long time, to be quite honest, but keeping the focus on your book. Again, I'm going to encourage everybody to buy this thing, read it. And again, Allan, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
Yeah, if anybody wants to get a copy, go to globalcollapsebook.com. You have links to Amazon and Barnes & Noble if you want to just get it there. But I can send you a signed copy if you're in the U.S. for about the same price.
Nice.
And again, it's available in sets if you want to spread the word. That's why I'm doing this, is to spread the word. And there's also, toward the end of the book, there's a section on coping. And that includes things like overcoming fear, becoming mentally resilient. There's a section on physical preparation. So it's not just, hey, this stuff's going on, but what can I do to kind of protect my family and be prepared? And there's a ton of QR codes in there that can link to all the stuff you might want to get. It gets into a whole prepping section for those who feel like I should be doing this and I never have really done it. It's an easy list connected with QR codes. You can just get it all done if that's where your head's at. But this is the kind of topic everybody should know about. It's part of being a well-rounded person. And so even though maybe people would push back against it, I would encourage you to check it out at globalcollapsebook.com. Maybe get a copy, share it with people once you read it. And if you would leave me a review on Amazon. So help spread the word.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks very much. I'm going to stay in touch with you and I'm going to get a copy myself. So
send me, email me your shipping address. I'll send you a free signed copy.
Oh, there we go.
There it is.
All right. Well, thank you, Allan. Appreciate your time.
All right, George. Great talking to you. Thanks so much.
You as well.
I wanna taste your content, hold your breath and feel the tension. Devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell.